next guest on the program is Eden-Monaro Labor MP Mike Kelly for more on the bushfire situation. Thanks for your time. The electorate's pretty badly hit at the moment. Talk us through it.
Yeah, it's been heartbreaking and gut-wrenching. You know, we've been absolutely smashed by this. Never in our history in this region have we had such widespread challenges. It's 42,000 square kilometres, my electorate. It's bigger than 66 countries. And we are under threat from north to south and east to west, and just heartrending loss of life, first and foremost. And I want to pass on my condolences to those families that have lost loved ones. Property damage has been enormous, but the economic hit will be huge. Particularly our timber industry has suffered enormously, probably over $70 million worth of damage there. We're going to have to come up with creative solutions to get that industry back up and running for the mills, Snowy Valleys, down in Bombala and on the coast. So it's going to be a challenge for our tourism industry, our farmers who are out there doing the euthanizing and gut-wrenching stuff there, and the fruit growers in Batlow. So widespread range of issues, and we're going to have to really get our thinking caps on, and I'll be hitting the road shortly to work on those reconstruction concepts and ideas.
I was actually talking to the Deputy PM about Batlow as one example. So you've got apple orchards and pine plantations, the vast majority destroyed. Even if you rebuild all the homes and you can rebuild businesses, where are the jobs for the next 10 or 20 years? How can a government even do something about that?
Well, this is what I think we need to look at with the reconstruction program. One of the things I've been advocating in relation to the timber industry, working with them, is under that carbon farming initiative to include the timber industry in an international trading regime, because with the timber industry you only get returns on your investment at about the 11-year or 25-year mark. But if we were using those as a carbon sink in international trading, you would be earning money from that forest from day one when you're doing the plantings. So
what happens when they're cut down though? Doesn't it go the other way?
No, well, because you have such a widespread, hopefully plantation base with continually processing it through. And this is where we were under our previous carbon farming initiative model when we were in government. We factored in all of the aspects of wildfire risk and the rest of it to enable a trading regime to be built around it. So I think creative solutions like that will be needed to resuscitate the industry, but I'm in touch with the Australian Forestry Products Association, and we'll work forward some ideas and bring them to government.
You mentioned the South Coast. That's been hit very hard. The government, in particular the last few days, saying, look, all help available, no shortage of money. Is that what you've witnessed? Is the recovery and relief good?
Look, in a situation that's unprecedented like this, there are going to be, gaps and holes in how we're responding. There's been issues around getting food out, of course, and I've been in almost hourly contact with the regional Telstra manager, Chris Taylor, who's doing a fantastic job with his teams, getting communications up and running. Our tourism season is pretty much smashed already this year. And we've lost assets like you've seen the tragic damage in Cambargo, beautiful old historic buildings. You can't put a historic building back, but perhaps we can come up with some replica ideas.
But just on the relief effort from the government, what you're saying, people aren't struggling to get food in some...
It's happening now, and it was
Where's that happening?
Down in the evacuation centres in particular, and into the towns.
Evacuation centres are short on food.
Well, yeah, there was problems in getting them out from evacuation centres to isolated towns like Bermagui, Cabargo, Tumbarumba. That's now being addressed, and particularly now that we have the ADF in there, because there were problems with route clearance and the like, and safety of getting things through. So I'm glad the government's responded with my call to, really properly mobilise the ADF.
So the ADF has been the circuit breaker there to be able to get stuff out to...
Very helpful, and the community are telling me too that they're just so reassured by seeing the ADF out amongst them as well. So it's serving two purposes there.
You've put forward an idea as well, getting a lot of attention. So people out of high school that graduate, mandatory civil service in disaster response. How would that work exactly?
Well, no, that's not my proposal actually. So the concept piece that I put out there addresses a range of issues, including how we now provide better air support and prevention measures for these mega fire situations. But also we have a huge manpower or personnel problem. And fireys have been contacting me, and one bloke said, that his team have been doing back-to-back rotations for more than 6 weeks, and their previous record was 4. And if I spend a lot of time on my RFS stations, it's an ageing demographic too. So we need to come up to the mark with our personnel capability. As the Climate Council says, we'll need double the number of firefighters by 2030, and the season, as we know, is dramatically lengthening. So my proposal is to introduce a whole range of promotional and support measures to encourage voluntary participation, particularly for the younger demographic. You can do things like pay their HECS and vet fees. We could do things like making sure they have the range of reserve legislation framework support in place for all of our responders. And see how we go over the next few years.
And if that doesn't work, then it might go to mandatory.
Then we're going to have to look at other ideas. And I'm completely, trying to invite people to offer those ideas. And one option that we could have is sort of like a, almost like an extra year of schooling or gap year program where our kids get top-level first aid training, survival of disasters training, and the ability to plug in to our responders framework.
And they'd get paid as well. You've got, that would be sort of more than 200,000 people each year going through this, getting training, getting paid as well. It sounds very expensive.
Well, and this is why we'll have to come up with, ideas around how we fund that sort of thing. And, perhaps a permanent disaster levy might be needed from here on in, which would also support the types of remediation we need more generally to protect infrastructure and communities. So those discussions can be had on the funding side of it, but we do need to treat this as a national threat that must be dealt with seriously in the years ahead. And what I've tried to do in that concept piece is promote two things. Firstly, I demand that we do a national review of looking at the projections, the facts, the capability requirements, personnel demands that we have going forward. And secondly, to promote discussion. I want to be provocative. I want people now to think of things that we could do to tackle this challenge.
All right. Well, it's out there on Facebook, as you stressed. It's your personal idea, but nothing wrong with an MP putting that forward. You have spoken about this because you see climate change as a hot war, in your words. That's how you justify the idea. Does this mean you're going to push for a pretty ambitious emissions reduction plan from Labor?
Well, there's no doubt that the climate change issue is completely tied closely with the challenge we're facing practically. So, that means that we can't do hazard reduction as much as we would like to. It means that we're going to have, as I said, this demand on firefighter personnel numbers. So we do need to have a strategic look at what we're doing on climate change as well, and it's part of the recovery effort. So a lot that we can do to rebuild rural and regional economies can be based on some of the things that really factors in the climate change struggle, like having the timber industry able to participate in trading regimes to have that investment.
But them growing that wood wouldn't necessarily, even if you tie them into those trading schemes, it doesn't actually do more for carbon emissions. It just ties them into a scheme.
Yeah, so we have two challenges.
You have to grow more wood for that to happen. Is that what you're saying? That
well,
agenda?
There's two challenges. One is reducing emissions for sure. We've got to do that. But another thing that will help us to come to grips with this challenge is drawing down carbon from the atmosphere.
But that's only if these trees are planted that wouldn't have been planted otherwise.
Well, there are trees now that are gone, So anything we do to do replanting now will help with acting as a carbon sequestration. But I want to see a big expansion of our timber industry. Actually, it's very important for our economy that we do that, and the Australian Forestry Products Association are very keen to see that happen.
We're out of time. Mike Kelly, some ideas put forward. Thanks for your time today.
No worries, Tom. Thank you.